I'd like to call this meeting of the City of Elkhorn Common Council to order. It's October 21st, 2024 at 5:30. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Tim Schroeder,
Here.
Peter Harvey,
Here.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Here.
Ron Dunwoody,
Here.
Scott McClory,
Here.
Ken Minell,
Here.
Kurt Harkness.
Here.
I know we've got some people here for public comments, so I'm going to read my little statement here, and then anyone that wants to come up can come up to the podium and give their name and address and speak for 3 minutes. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes each. The public may speak on any item of city concern, whether or not the topic is included on this agenda. However, if the topic does not pertain to an item listed on the council agenda, the council is not permitted to address or discuss the matter during this meeting. Under open meeting laws, the council must notice an item on the agenda to allow discussion on that matter. If council is not permitted to discuss your concerns, your comments will be considered and may be placed on a future agenda for further discussion. And who would like to start out here?
Good evening, Karen Graham, 823 East Town Manor. And I am coming to the council's attention. We are residents to represent the subdivision. I'm one of the vice presidents on the board of the association. And our question is, how do we fully become part of Elkhorn? Currently we are, but we are not. We do pay taxes to the city, but we are responsible for streets, park, land between the Pines and East Town Manor, common grounds, water, sewers, street lights, and fire hydrants. Each homeowner pays a yearly each homeowner pays taxes to the city of Elkhorn along with yearly dues of $720. We are a 66-unit subdivision with one unimproved lot. What and how would the city be willing to help our subdivision, like with any other resources? Since we are paying taxes already, would you be willing to help with fire hydrants, snow plow, our lights in our subdivision? And then any other questions from you folks about our subdivision and what it all entails?
We're not really able to ask questions,
Can't ask,
sorry.
okay. But anyways, we're just looking to see, it might be future discussions, but we're just wanting to see how the city will help us in our subdivision and what happens to the subdivision when there's no longer a board to represent the subdivision and what happens after that. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys here for public comment? Go ahead. You're welcome.
I am Joe Gonzalez. I live at 822 East Town Manor. And I'm kind of going off the same thing is we're just trying to find some answers on what exactly does an association that was founded and I guess gathered in the early 80s and trying to find out like as she said, what happens when nobody wants to be on the board, because at this point in time it's a good thing to understand maybe going in the future that yeah, these associations are good at a certain point, but what happens in 40, 50 years when their mothers or grandparents pass away and then like, well, it kind of sucks to be somebody else to take over and when nobody else wants to do it. So that's kind of why we're just trying to figure out exactly how it all works and what direction do we go to, because it is kind of frustrating when you're paying almost $3,000 for taxes and we're not getting any kind of assistance at all from Elkhorn at all. So it is a little frustrating when you have 67 units asking questions all the time. Well, why doesn't the city help out? Why doesn't the city help out? Well, that's why we're kind of here to get some, hopefully get some kind of answers or where we can go to get some answers, because it is kind of frustrating. But that's pretty much about it.
Okay, thank you.
My name is David Crosby. I live at 39 Monica Drive. I wish to be read into record verbatim. There are only a few questions that require answering to address the Elkhorn West subdivision downstream flooding condition to the 39 Monica Drive home to derive a solution. When did the flooding first occur? Answer, 2008. Was there any prior flooding? Answer, not once for the preceding 24 years. If not, then what changed? Elkhorn West subdivision completion in 2006. Is there a solution that can restore non-flood conditions that existed prior to 2006? This question requires fact-based examination. Contained within the Kapoor 2022 Elkhorn Stormwater Improvements Memo to the City of Elkhorn is this statement. Additionally, this improvement can reduce overtopping of existing wetland onto West Street while also reducing stormwater flows to an undersized storm sewer system. Deduction. By virtue of the flood condition is non-existent for 24 years prior to the subdivision completion, indicates the storm sewer is correctly sized for the pre-existing surface area. Adding the subdivision exceeded existing storm sewer design limits. Next, head of DPW, a civil engineer, stated on 9/30 of 24, you are never ever going to fix the problem unless you design a storm sewer to handle a 200-year storm. The city engineer then rendered consenting opinion. Final deduction. There is no solution the city is willing to expedite that can restore non-flood conditions that existed prior to 2006. Action to be taken. Therefore, the city shall be permitted utility storage of surface water at 39 Monica Drive at elevation up to storm drain top center measurement of sea level elevation of 1,032.57 feet. At this elevation, overtopping of storage area enters a proposed north and south spillway conducting flow to the east. The proposed design shall divert surface water utility storage away from the structure. Be advised, this action is taken to reduce the threat of personal injury or death by drowning or electrocution to those sleeping in the lower bedrooms when another major nighttime flood event occurs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Anyone else wish to be heard? Hearing none, we'll move on. We've got a consent agenda for the meeting minutes of the Common Council, October 7th, 2024, and Finance and Judicial Committee, October 7th, 2024. Any questions or corrections?
Make a motion to approve consent agenda. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Bills payable. We've got bills payable in the amount of $3,657,051.29.
I make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Ken Minell,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Peter Harvey.
Yes.
The motion passes. Joe Murray from Ellers is, oh, no, you are here. Okay, I didn't see you sneak in. That's great, thanks.
I'm sorry. Sorry for running late. I ran into a little bit of traffic coming out of Waukesha. I don't think you know the governor. I'm sorry. president is coming into town, we didn't say when or where. There's two resolutions for each.
Okay.
Thank you.
So back me up a little bit, so I apologize for running in here last minute.
Is this the same thing you just gave us? Okay.
I didn't know it. Excuse me. Good evening. I'm Joe Murray from Ellers. Proud to be the city's financial advisor. I get to talk to you on a number of items this evening. First off is in regard to the debt issuance. You had two sales today. The 2024C, which were general obligation promissory notes to cover your general capital improvement plan items, and also the 2024D, which was from some water work improvements that's going to be paid for out of the water utility. On the 2024C, these are the sale day reports that I just handed out, and I understand that Adam did as well, so I apologize for killing more trees. The 2024Cs are for $2,085,000 general obligation promissory notes. Today, on your behalf, we received 3 bids. The second place bid, or the cover bid as we call it, was within 2 basis points, and a basis point is equal to 0.01%, so it's very, very close. And all 3 of the bids came in, were within 6 basis points. There's good competition out there to try to win your debt issuance today. The low bid came in from BOK, which stands for the Bank of Oklahoma. And Bank of Oklahoma does have a large presence here in Wisconsin, in the Milwaukee County and Waukesha area. They bid on and buy a lot of Wisconsin debt, so don't be surprised by that. I see that name quite often. The true interest cost for the issue came in at 3.6973%, 3.7%. That's 14 basis points below the 3.84% that we had projected, so that was good news. There was also a bid premium where this is where the underwriter places larger coupon interest rates on it, so it's easier to attract investors. In return for having higher coupon rates, they give the city cash up front to pay those down. That provided $89,406 to be put into the debt service fund. That can only be used for debt service, so that helps reduce the amount that is going to be paid by the taxpayers. So that's a positive thing. There was also some leftover proceeds, including underwriter's discount, and provided $38,806, which will provide for some protection for cost overruns in case anything happens on those projects. Excuse me, and the net interest cost pretty much was dead on, a little bit under on the true interest cost, but the savings was $16,000. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but recommend that the council adopt the resolution awarding $2,085,000 general obligation promissory notes, Series 2024C, to the Bank of Oklahoma at a true interest cost of 3.6973165%. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Did you say the underwriter, help me out, I understand the principal amount, underwriter discount, you said 38,000?
Yes, $38,806 was unused, included in the size of the issue.
Okay, because mine says 30,233.
On your next page,
Thanks.
up top.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
So the underwriter discount, that's the cost of the underwriter to write the bond?
Yes, that's their compensation.
Can you explain, what's reoffering premium?
The reoffering premium is like I commented on earlier. This is where the underwriter puts a higher coupon interest rate on it. It's easier to sell to an investor something that has an interest payment of 5% than say 3%. So in return for them being able to sell to the investor at a 5% return, they give the city cash to lower down that cost.
Back to the 3 that they were
To get it back to what the yield should be, correct.
Okay.
And the reoffering premium is, that's where it all comes from?
The reoffering premium is the cash back from the underwriter.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so the underwriter would have been paid, you know, like about 150,000, but then they gave us back 89,000?
No, the underwriter would have been paid, we had anticipated it at being roughly $26,000. That was what was included in the size of the issue to pay the underwriter.
Oh, and I see, so then it gets bigger, the premiums go up because of the,
The premiums go up by how high they put the coupon interest rates on. If you look, maybe it might be easier if I show you. If you look at page, page numbers didn't come through on here, see. It's page 2. It looks like this. If you could, I don't know who's running the meeting or the board, if you could scroll down a couple pages, please. That one would be fine, I'm sorry, that would work great. If you look at that page, you'll see that the coupon rate, that is what the investor gets back every 6 months in interest earnings. And you'll see it's got a 5%. The reoffering yield is what the market says they should be receiving in today's market. So in return for getting a 5% interest payment that really should only be paying 3.4%, the underwriter is giving the city cash to pay down the cost for that higher coupon in return to make it easier for them to sell, and that lowers down your cost for the true interest cost.
okay, thanks.
Sure. It's not an easy topic. I've tried to make it as simple as I can, and to be very honest, you're the first person that's really pushed for a more in-depth answer on that, so it was a good question.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the Cs? The second issue that I handed out, also a sale day report for the 2024 Ds. These were $1,515,000 of water work and electric revenue bonds for water work improvement projects. We also received the same 3 bidders. Underwriting firms came in and submitted interest in buying these. It was also won by Bank Oklahoma. The cover bid on this one came also within 3 basis points, so again, very close. All 3 were within 6 basis points, and all of them were well underneath the projected interest cost that we had. The winning bid, again, came from Bank Oklahoma at 3.87%, which is 22 basis points. Each basis point, again, is 0.01%, below the 4.09% that was projected. There was, again, some underwriter unused discount, because this was also a premium bid of $62,810. That was also kept by the city to provide for some a cushion if there is any cost overruns associated with the projects going forward. As revenue debt, the city is required to fund a debt service reserve fund, which puts aside, essentially, in simple terms, 1 year's worth of principal and interest payments. If something were to happen, it's to ensure that the investor has got an extra incentive or assurance that they are going to be paid. That came in about $12,000 higher than we had expected. The total net interest cost on this issue came in $37,807 more than I projected. So, as I told Corey first thing this morning when we got the bids, pretty much came in dead on. A little lower on the GOs, a little higher on the revenues. Recommend that the council adopt a resolution awarding the sale of $1,515,000 waterworks and electric system revenue bonds, Series 2024D, to the Bank Oklahoma, true interest cost of 3.8702%. And again, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
These, if I remember right, these have a 10-year, we could start paying back early at 10-year on this?
Correct. Both of them have 10-year call provisions.
Okay.
So if interest rates do go down in 10 years, we can refund this and get some savings.
Great.
I should also mention very briefly that as part of the process, the city did receive a Moody's credit rating. You should be very proud to know that your rating of AA3 was affirmed on both the general obligation and the revenue bond issue. I've attached copies of the rating report on both sale day reports, so if you have a chance, you might want to read how the rating agencies look at the positive things that are going on with the city. Next, I'll just keep rambling. As Adam likes to put it, it's all Joe all the time, so I'm proud to be here and help out when I can. You should have received a copy of this presentation in your packets. Just a general overview of tax incremental financing, answer any questions you might have. Go to the next slide, please. Right now, the city only has one district, that's tax increment district number 4. It's on the northeast and southwest corners of 167 and Highway 43. I believe that's Lincoln Drive. It's the Love's gas station down on the southwest corner, and the new development that's going in on the northeast side. You can see all the dirt that's moved. I saw it as I was driving in. The city did do an amendment last year to expand district number 4 to provide for that new development for all the dirt that you're seeing being moved on. Next slide, please. There is discussion about a proposed new TIF district number 5. You can see it here. It's all the parcels that are in kind of the reddish area. It's proposed to help create a mixed-use district, a mixed-use tax increment district for the Newman development. The total area in that red you see on the map is roughly 275 acres. 61 acres of that would be the Newman development, which is looking like it would construct roughly 140 single-family homes to generate roughly $56 million of incremental value. Next slide, please, or second slide, please. Sorry. Next slide, please. In general terms, just some acronyms and overview about what tax increment financing is. You'll hear me and everybody else talking about TIF. TIF stands for tax incremental financing. That's the formal name of the actual tool by statute. Tax increment district, or a TID, is the district or the boundary, that red area you just saw on the map. But you'll often hear me and everybody else flip-flop and refer to TIF and TID as being the same thing. We're all talking about the same general tool, but they are different. But if you hear hear them differently, they're essentially referring to the same thing. This is the most powerful economic development tool that the city and municipalities in Wisconsin have to try to help facilitate development. It's really almost your only tool that you have out there to help facilitate development. So it allows you, if you can go to the next slide, again, very basic here, and I don't mean to be making this sound too simple and by going through it, but what happens when you create a tax increment district is on the slide you see the blue area is the base property value. That's the value that the property is worth when the TID is created. That value is locked in so that all the underlying tax districts, including the city, get the same amount of tax revenue from that base property value as it is as if moving forward is the day you create that TID. The purple area is the new development that comes on, the increase in value that happens as part of the TID district. So as the TID's value is going up, the underlying taxing districts continue to receive payments based on that blue value throughout the life of the TID. The purple area is the increased revenue that is collected over time by the increased value going on. And then when the TID closes, it goes back to the green. The TID goes off the tax roll of the district, and all the property are loaded back in so that everybody's paying for the taxes the same as everybody else. If you go to the next slide, please. What's important to keep in mind is that in that purple area, when you create a TID, you being the city, capture all the tax revenue for all the taxing jurisdictions for that incremental value, the new development. So whatever value, you're getting the value that's created by the school district, the county, the technical college, all that is, it's not just the city's tax rate on that property, it's all the jurisdictions' property tax rate to generate the revenue. So that's why all the districts are involved in the process, and that's why it's important to understand that the decisions that you make as a city does have an impact on those other taxing jurisdictions, and they have their ability to provide input in the process through the Joint Review Board. Next slide, real quickly, please. So the intent of a tax increment district and financing is to try to help, again, promote development, integrate a public-private benefit and partnership moving forward. I know you all have heard developers stand here and talk about how they'd like to build this, that, and the other thing, but costs have gone up. There's wetland issues to address. There are interest rates have gone up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they are trying to get some help with that in return for helping them get development. Go to the next one, please. Just some quickly on creation. One of the important things is that TIDs are not, it's not a free-for-all, it's not total. You are limited. It cannot exceed more than 12% of your equalized value. That's the incremental value that's in your existing TID. And as I said, you only have one. And the base value for the new and any new TIDs, you can't have it be more than 12% of the city's overall equalized value. And I've got the calculation on the next slide. The TID district also needs to be contiguous, so all the parcels that are included have to touch or be right across the street from each other. If you looked at that map of the proposed district, all the red parcels, you'll see they are all next to each other across the street to get there. You have to have them contiguous. You can't just pick and choose all over the city. They have to be contiguous, which requires that from the map that was up there, for 61 acres of new development, it had to get around, pick a very large area to accomplish that. Go to the next slide, please. So for the 12% for Elkhorn specifically, as I said, you've only got one district, district number 4. The incremental value in District 4 is just over $16 million. The village's or the city's total equalized value is $1.26 million. So 12% of that says you could have $151.5 million in TIF districts. You've only got, as I show up there, the 16.3, so you have capacity for $135 million of TIF district that you could add into it. So you have a large capacity. I just wanted to highlight that you do have the capacity for TID number 5, and I suspect it'll be for future TIFs if it were to come up and moving forward in the future. Next slide, please. There are a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are 5 different types of TIF districts that the city could create by statute. I won't get into all of them. Mixed use at the top is the one that TID 5 is being considered. 4, it's the most common. It has a life of 20 years is the maximum life that it can have. It is to be suitable for a combination of industrial, commercial, and or residential. It must be at least 2 out of the 3. It doesn't need to be all 3, but it has to have at least 2 of the 3. And no more than 35% of that new district can be for newly platted residential. Again, back to the map for TID District 5, it's 61 acres for 140 new single-family homes. So that means the total district must, that 61 acres has to be less than 35% of the total TID district. So that's why it's such a large area that's being proposed to allow and facilitate that 35%.
These are the houses at 550,000, right?
I don't remember what the value that was expected of those houses. I think it was around $500,000.
Target was 400,000.
400,000?
So does doing a TID district affect the city's bond rating? Or are they completely kind of separate from each other?
They're pretty much separate from each other. Rating agencies would like to see that there is development. Things are looking positive and not see your values declining. They like to see population going up, values going up. So the more, I would say that having a TIF district, if anything, would probably be a positive more than a negative. Next slide, please. So why would you provide any incentives to help development? There's, the statement I've heard at times that this is welfare, that you're providing welfare. I don't agree with that statement. What it is that a partnership, and that you as a city are providing money and some sort of resources to help that development happen, because but for your assistance, that development wouldn't happen. In either the values or the timing of what you'd like. So it must pass that but-for test, that without your assistance, it wasn't going to happen, plain and simple. So a lot of communities, when they are considering providing incentives, they look at helping to pay for public improvements, streets, stormwater that was brought up, water, sewer extensions, if there are costs, public infrastructure costs, required for that development. Communities help pay for that. Others provide cash simply to help reduce the cost to the developer, to help them pay for the higher interest cost. It can be as simple as that, to help lower their cost. When and how do you provide the incentives can be done up front. You could provide cash up front to the developer by either the city incurring debt, which happened for TID number 4, or you could use cash on hand in your fund balance, which would be a negative from a credit rating agency standpoint. But you could do it up front that way, or another time would be to do it over time through a municipal revenue obligation or an MRO, which is where you would have it being paid back to the developer on a pay-as-you-go basis, or pay-go. This would be our recommendation. This is what you did for TID number 4 in the amendment, was to do a MRO and a pay-go arrangement where the developer receives the incentives based on their construction timeline and values and the money that is incremental revenue that is collected by the city. This is a more protection for the city, and such that if the developer doesn't build as fast as they say they are, doesn't build the values that they say they're going to do, what have you, if they don't build as much and generate as much revenue, they don't get as much of an incentive back. So it puts all the responsibility and incentives back onto the developer to build as quickly as they can at the highest value that they possibly can, so that those incentives can get paid back to them as quickly as they can. If they don't, you're not obligated to pay it, and the developer has to come up with that money that they're not generating some other way, out of their own pocket.
What if the developer goes in bankruptcy? What are the bad things about a TIF? What are the bad things that can happen using a TIF?
Well, bad things about a TIF would be if you were to issue debt. Let's say that the city were to provide an incentive upfront by paying for putting in all the streets and extending all the sewer and building the storm.
That's what we're talking about doing, right?
I don't have the details as to what TID
Okay, I got you.
5 is at this point. Today it was intended to be a general overview discussion of TID, not If and when that happens, I'll be back in front of you to give you more specifics about TID 5 and what that would be. This was intended just to be more of an overview. But the potential negative that you could have would be if the city were to agree to put in and pay for the infrastructure up front for the development, such that kind of, if you build it, they will come. If the parcel, the development area's got the utilities, a nice street, it's obviously much more attractive and easier to build on than a vacant field that doesn't have anything there. It's got to wait for the street to get paved out to them, wait for the utilities to be extended. It's essentially what happened on TID 4. The city helped promote development down at the interchange. The city incurred debt, paid to put in the infrastructure, and you are at risk of making those payments. If the development doesn't happen as fast as was expected, you are still obligated to make those debt service payments for the utilities and everything that you issued going on out there. So that's the risk. If the development, you incurred those costs and the developer walked away for whatever reason, interest rates, construction, what have you, like I said, you're still on the hook to pay for that infrastructure. As I said, in the last amendment for TID number 4, and I know from discussions with the administrator, the city's position has been to developers, we're not interested in incurring the cost again, like you did in TID 4, and doing it on a pay-go basis through a municipal revenue obligation, such that if the development doesn't happen, it's your fault, developer. There's no cost. We're not exposed. That means you're paying the cost. You're not getting the revenue.
So pay-go means we put up one house, we build enough street for one house. We put up 2 houses, we build enough street for 2 houses.
No.
Help me out. I thought that's where you were going.
It's like that. It's not that specific. Think of it as if it's a pay-go arrangement, and let's say the city agrees that you will provide back 50% of the incremental revenue that's created by that development, okay? And as those lots are developed, they get essentially 50% of the tax revenue, not the value of that lot, 50% of the tax revenue that's collected on that lot, so that they would get 50% of $100,000. Well, we've been talking, let's just use the example of $400,000. So that lot would be worth $400,000.
Okay.
The taxes generated on that in the example we showed with the tax rate of $20 would mean you're generating $8,000 a year, okay, for each lot. And that would mean that would be revenue that you could provide. So if you gave half of that, would say to the developer, if you build one lot, I'll give you $4,000 a year. That doesn't pay for a street, that doesn't pay for the utilities for that one lot. But it's just saying, here's the stream of revenue. The developer then takes that to their bank and says, if I build this like I think I'm going to, the city's gonna give me this, here's the revenue stream I'm getting back.
Right.
Yes, here's the obligation, here's what the city says, if I build it and they do, and it comes in like I say it's going to do, here's the money, cash flow I'm getting, I'm gonna use that to pay you back, bank. Bank gives the developer the loan, and the developer can put in that infrastructure.
And that's a safer way to go.
Yes, that is the safer way reduces the risk to the city, would be to do it through a pay-as-you-go relationship arrangement, and that would be through a municipal revenue obligation. Again, I'm not trying to talk specifics about TID 5, but I can tell you that is what the city did for the amendment on TID 4, was to do it through a pay-go arrangement, so that if all that dirt you see moving on the northeast side of 43 and Lincoln Drive or Avenue, if that developer doesn't build it as fast as he said he was going to, he's not going to make as much money. Plain and simple.
Gotcha. So there, you've got the incentive.
It puts the incentive back onto the developer to say, you build it, we'll pay you, but we're not paying you if you don't build.
Gotcha.
And if you don't build as much, we're not paying you as much. Plain and simple.
Thank you.
Sure. So go to the next slide, please. Again, so what are the incentives paying for? Like I said, if it's for public infrastructure, maybe you'd be willing to provide more incentives to help pay for city streets, maybe a park, whatever that money is, saying that you're willing to pay for those public improvements, or maybe the city might be willing to pay more for that. The city might be willing to pay more if it has more of a public purpose, such as you're trying to clean up a blighted area, a dilapidated or vacant building that's been a problem, or you have environmental issues that might have been created by a prior user that has polluted the ground with gasoline and gas stations as an example. And so there's an additional cost associated with development on that site from what's happened. And the city might be more supportive of paying more money because it's going to fix that problem specifically. And also, you might determine how much you want to provide based on the type of development and what it's going to generate. Is it going for residential? What kind of houses are they going to be? Are we talking upper end houses? Are you talking workforce housing? Or what type of housing? Multifamily, single family? Is that something you're interested in, something you support? Also, is it going to generate more students for the school system? School districts like to have more development because that usually means more kids. More kids means more revenue to the school districts as they get more students. Is it a commercial or industrial, large development? I'm sure everybody here has heard of Foxconn. I'm not going to get into specifics as to good, bad, or what have you, and did they do or did they not do, but it was still generating a large number of jobs. That was supported by the state, everybody, the state, federal level, all thought Foxconn was going to generate all these jobs, and therefore it was a positive thing for the community, and that was supportive and helped support a tax increment district. Or it could be something that just has a very large value that's going to bring in, maybe not a lot of jobs, but it's just going to be a huge property value so that it's going to increase your equalized value or diversify your tax base so that when you do levy taxes, the tax rate goes down to the average homeowner because you're spreading it out a bigger pool. You also want to consider when you're doing incentives, is there competition? Is a developer coming to you and saying, if you give us X, we'll build in Elkhorn. If you don't do it, we're going to build our plant or neighborhood or whatever you want to call it in Janesville, just as an example. Is there competition? And you will find situations where it is that simple. A developer is going to come in and say, who's going to give me a better deal? Who's going to give me $1 more for my development that's got better terms, and that's where I'm going to go. It's a free market, and so if you have competition, it can be up to that. You can go to the next slide, please. So there really isn't any rule of thumb as to how much money, if you are going to provide incentives, is it a yes or no answer, plain and simple? No. Is it to say you're going to give X% to every developer all the time? No. It's what you have to evaluate every single time based on the type of development that's coming in. Do you like it? Do you support it? Does it warrant it? Some communities I know only help provide assistance only to help pay for public improvements. I would narrow it down to say we'll only help you pay for the public improvements. Other than that we're not interested in it. Some help pay for this direct cost that the city's requiring for development. This would be as an example, would be if you required underground parking. Cost for an underground parking spot is roughly $30,000 a piece. Obviously, that's much more expensive than putting a large surface asphalt parking lot, but it might be something that the city truly wants. It might be something that the city would require It's more of a situation I see in the inner city where their redevelopment, everybody wants to have a garage, and there's not enough land to do it, but that's an example. Or if the developer came in and said they wanted to put on vinyl siding, and you said, no, we want it to be brick, and I'm just using examples. So the city might say, we'll be willing to help support the extra cost that you'd incur going from vinyl to brick siding and better construction materials, or require them to put in maybe a clubhouse with a pool, an amenity like that sort of thing. So that's some communities help pay for those specific costs. On the other hand, I have seen communities that have agreed to pay 100% of the incremental value. Communities, as examples, that are desperate's a little too strong of a word, but I'm drawing a blank on what would be something less for residential development. Communities that haven't seen new homes built in decades, communities that are seeing development of industrial, new jobs coming into town, and all those employers are saying, I can't attract employees because they have to drive an hour to come to their job, and I can't get enough people to come work for my company. If I have the jobs, if they can live in your community, I can be here, I can do what I need to do, more jobs, more revenue, win, 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 but I can't do it unless I get the housing. You know, the employer, large company is not going to build housing. But that's an example where communities are paying more to help incentivize that development. So it all depends. I can't tell you a number you should or shouldn't do. And keep in mind, that's the art of negotiation that you have. Next slide, please. So another question then is, how do you know how much you should give? What's appropriate? One thing that the city can do is you could do a developer performer review. And what that essentially is where you hire an outside firm to do a third-party evaluation of the developer's proposal. They have to open their books. What's the money? How much money is going, what's it going for? How much is the developer contributing to the project? Whose money is being spent first? Is it the incentive money from the city, or is the developer having to put the money in and pay for it up front, like in a pay-go relationship? Excuse me. What is the rate of return that the developer is going to get with or without the incentives? And is that rate of return reasonable? There are standards. I mean, obviously a developer is expecting to get paid and making money on a deal. Everybody needs to understand that. But are they looking to get more of a rate of return, more than what the market says they should get? Kind of like the reoffering yields on the debt issue we just talked about. The market says that this type of development, the developer should receive a rate of return of 10%, 15% as an example. Doing a performer review, running the numbers, you can see how much are they really getting back. If you don't do a performer review, you're really just relying on the developer saying, I need the money. So you can go to an extra level of doing a performer review if you wanted to help further gauge are the incentives you're providing, are they reasonable to what the market says you should be providing, or what the developer's request, are they reasonable is probably a better way to put it.
Have you seen this work where it's been beneficial for the city? Like you look at they've been able to see their books. They're charging profit on top of profit, or something. Something's going on.
Yes.
Have you seen it? Have you seen it where the percent? Let's say their percentage was too high. There's been a benefit for the city. Is that typically what happens?
You can write it. Benefit to the city might not be the right word.
Share.
Yes, it's called a clawback provision, and you put it in the development agreement. after doing the developer review and say, everybody agrees you should be making 15%, okay? After a certain time period, you identify that in the agreement, maybe 5 years or after completion, essential build out, you run the numbers again and then it comes back and the numbers show you made 25%. You made more money than you said you were going to. We want some of our money back. So that instead of at 25%, the developer then pays that money back to the city to reduce their return and get some money back so that you're getting back to that 15%. You say the market was 15%. If you made 25, market was better, you did a better job, you built it cheaper, more efficiently, your costs were less and rep values are higher. Now we'll say you can get 20%. City gets 5% back, they get 5%. It's a partnership arrangement, but again, it's putting all the incentive and the motivation is back on the developer to do that as best they can. But yes, you could put we call it a clawback provision in your development agreement.
You said 5 years?
I just threw that out as an example. You can put, it's either 5 years after build out, depending on the type of development. If it's going to be a multi-year construction, it might be 5 years.
Let me ask you, is there any way for the city to protect itself? Say let's say the developer does get 25%, and before we get to go to the clawback, he goes out of business. And now we don't have anybody to go back to. Is there anything that we can set up ahead of time, a bond, a performance bond, or is there something that the city can put in place to protect itself in case of?
I'll defer to the city attorney as to all the legalities and potentials, but some of the things I have seen is you can put it as a lien against the property. So that would mean that if the developer walks away, goes away, you're still having a lien against the property within the development so that you're going to get some money back that way. It's putting the cost onto whoever buys it next, which they're not going to like, but that's one way you could do. Like I said, I'm not an attorney, but there are some protections you can put in to make this as safe as you possibly can for the city, and to limit it to what is appropriate. There are ways you can do that. The short answer is yes.
Okay. I'll take the short answer, thanks.
That's all I had on slides. Are there any other questions? As I said, for TID 5, this isn't specific for that this evening. If that does move forward, I will be back in front of you with a project plan talking about what kind of incentives you were providing, how the cash flow looks, et cetera, and explaining all that to you so that you would have the ability to evaluate it from the TID creation, and at the same time, you'll probably be negotiating a developer's agreement with what would be a proper rate of return, what kind of clawbacks, what kind of securities that the city would want to put on that, et cetera, et cetera.
The question I have is, my understanding is that the use of TIF funds for residential developments has changed over the last few decades. Am I right that 20 years ago it was kind of unheard of, and now it's much more acceptable?
I wouldn't put it that way. I would say I am seeing, the state is seeing more residential development asking for TIF assistance. Seeing almost every TIF district that's being created right now is a mixed use district. I'd have to guess it's probably 75% of the TIDs that are created statewide every year, 75% of them are mixed use districts. I think the original thought was to help provide incentives to land major employers, major industry and development, and it just has expanded. And right now in Wisconsin and in this area, there's a demand for housing. Workforce housing, affordable housing is a demand, not just in this part of the state, throughout the country. So there is more demand for assistance on doing residential. But it is limited to that 35% test, as I talked about in a mixed use, so that of the total area, no more than 35% of it can be for newly platted residential. And newly platted residential means single family, it means apartments, it means duplexes, it means senior housing, you know, complexes where people live and in their care facilities, or they move on, if you will, as they age and their mental and physical capabilities get more limited and they move from one phase to a different phase. If people live there, that's considered residential in the eyes of the state. So there's been more support, or I wouldn't say support, more demand for residential assistance, and we are seeing mostly these requests are coming in for help with doing residential development at this point. Yes.
Thanks. I promise my last question is, I noticed on the proposed map for TID 5, there were a lot of existing homes and some of it existing commercial. How does the new development affect the existing properties when it comes to taxes? And we've got a
Thank you
lot
for
of
pointing.
existing
Okay.
homes here, some existing commercial.
Nothing. It doesn't, all those parcels, if it's already developed and they were gonna have a TIF district on top of it, it would have no impact on them whatsoever. Their taxes would not change at all. They're part of that blue area as part of the base value. They continue to pay the taxes based on what the values of their property is the day the TID district was created.
Okay, but if their property values go up, does the additional tax become part of the increment?
Yes.
Okay.
So you own a house that's worth $100,000 in one of those existing subdivisions. And the value of that house goes up to $150,000 because they build a new garage on that property, what have you. The tax increment district would capture the value of the new garage, $50,000. That would go in the incremental revenue. That would be part of that purple triangle piece going forward. The $100,000 for that house would continue to be paid into all the other taxing jurisdictions. But the the homeowner is going to pay taxes based on it being worth $150,000. They won't see a separation. It won't make, in their eyes, they won't know it's there. It doesn't impact them positively or negatively to be part of this, part of the red area in the map, even if they don't want to develop. It would have no impact on them whatsoever.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have any questions for Joel?
Yeah, one more kind of on the same thing you were talking about. If the house at 150,000, 5 years later is worth 200,000, we have $50,000 of an increased value. Does that still stay as the baseline? Because it was the original, not the, well, I guess it's still part of the garage is part of the picture, part of that 200,000 that would have to be taken off. But let's say, whatever, the 40 grand, the taxes on the 40 grand, let's say that was the increase. Does that stay in the baseline money, or does that go into the incremental money of being an existing home?
Whatever the value and what's there the date you created. So if
So everything above that number,
yes, is captured as incremental revenue in the TIF district.
As long as the TID is still open.
Yes.
Once the TID closes, then it all goes back to the city.
Right.
But anything above the baseline goes to the TID until it closes.
But I just want to make sure I'm
I
clear.
didn't realize it was on the existing for homes also.
Well, only if the value goes up.
Well, it does.
Well, then, correct, then that's the difference.
And so does that, so the increment then gets shared between the developer and the city?
It's however you negotiate it.
Well, okay, so, wow.
I just want to make sure everybody's clear on this. The property owner of that house and then building the garage, they are going to continue to pay taxes based on the value of whatever their property is worth. In this example, it's gone from $100,000 to $150,000. $50,000 of that value in taxes is gonna go to the TIF district. The other $100,000 is in the base value, that blue area, that's gonna be spread to the other taxing jurisdictions. That property owner is gonna pay the value of $150,000 regardless of it being a TID or not. They're gonna pay it, it's just how it's split up in terms of where the revenue goes between the city and the other jurisdictions.
All right. Well, I think we better move on. Thanks. Thanks, Joe. Great
Sorry, I went too long.
presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, very good.
We have a report of city officers. For the mayor's report, we're trying to fill Lacey's position. We put out for applications. We got quite a few applications. No one with clerk experience. We decided that we were going to interview Rebecca, and just my observation of the interview, she was well organized, extremely bright, extremely thoughtful with her answers. She knocked it out of the park by my standards, and so I would like to appoint her as the permanent city clerk for the city of Elkhorn.
I make a motion to approve, and I was present also at the interviews, and I echo the comments of the mayor.
I'll second.
Okay. I guess there's an employment contract, so would your motion be subject to that employment contract?
Yes.
Being approved?
Yes.
Second.
And the second. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Should we roll call? I think we should roll call this. Put your word.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Ken Minell,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody.
Yes.
Thank you, by the way.
Motion passes. We have a new city clerk. Adam, city administrator's report.
This will be quick, I'll try. Just real quickly, wanted to just remind everybody, in-person absentee voting starts tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and will continue through Friday, November 1st. I know my memo says Thursday, October 31st, but it's technically Friday, November 1st. So, and we will be offering in-person voting this Saturday as well from 7 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. So it's something new that we're doing this year, is offering weekend time. So if you have any questions, please contact the city. Rebecca, anything you want to add to that?
Last day to register in person is next Friday, November 1st, at the clerk's office.
But we do have same day registration as well.
Mhm.
So, just wanted to remind everybody that East Centralia Street is open, so that project reached substantial completion. As some of you probably saw today, they were doing repairs on South Lincoln Street. Sounds like Chris at the railroad crossing. Sounds like Chris had some concerns about lack of signage, perhaps, of who was out there. But I do want to thank Matt for coordinating with Watco, the railroad, to get that fixed, because I know that was a concern. So, and then Matt, do you want to talk about leaf pickup at all?
Sure. Regarding the railroad crossing, they got half of it done today, so they'll be back tomorrow to finish the other half. Regarding leaf collection, we have picked up some piles. You know, it's all based on the time of the year. So, just talking to Joel, we'll look to gather more lists of piles as we see them and pick those up. I imagine we'll probably be in full swing maybe next week. I know there's talking rain this weekend that might bring down some more leaves, but we'll just kind of keep an eye out and increase production as we need to.
You said you've already been out looking for piles?
Yeah.
You need to come to my district.
Okay.
I've seen some piles as well.
And that's it for me.
All right, thanks. Adam, we've got reports of city boards and community partners. Fire advisory.
We have a meeting this Thursday
Okay, great, thank you. Library.
Good evening and congratulations, Rebecca. Just as written, but the library was visited this past week by Kathy Blumenfeld, the Secretary of the Department of Administration, library staff, some of our nonprofit partners, and Mayor Tim Schroeder was there to welcome her and give her a tour of the facility, as well as discuss some initial plans for the use of the Flexible Facilities Grant. She was genuinely excited for us and the changes that we have in mind. The request for proposal for an architecture construction firm went out today and is available to view on the library's website. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. Rec Advisory.
Yep, our next Park and Rec Board meeting is on Wednesday, November 13th at City Hall.
Okay, thanks. Carol, Chamber of Commerce.
Good evening. Just a follow-up of the last 30 days about since we've been here, and that's encompassing a lot of Oktoberfest. We were blessed on Saturday to probably greet anywhere we're guessing between 8,000 and 10,000 people. As soon as I get exact numbers from Placer, which hasn't been updated yet, I will let you know of that. But that's a pretty valid numbers based on consumption of alcohol and wristbands issued and facts that we use to do that. But Saturday was a great day. We had 18 food trucks, 117 vendors, included 9 local establishments in the walk around town. We had the 2 different beer tents. We had 3 different bands going on that day. We had parked 153 classic or different cars throughout the car show area. We had 75 runners that participated in the Elkhorn Oktoberfest, and we had 43 participants in our Stein holding contest. So thank you for DPW, the police department, the city, and everybody else that assists us in that day, because no matter what the weather is, whether it's going to rain, snow, or be a beautiful 75-degree day, we still put all our effort into it, and we complete it starting at 5:30 in the morning, and I walked into my house about 8:45 that night. So, but if I thank you for all that joined us down there and was able to make it. But if you have any questions, concerns, and now we are working on all of our spring events, planning, participating in tourism for spring, the Chicago Golf Show, the Milwaukee Golf Show. We're working on a couple different things with Travel Wisconsin and a group collaborative with our local chambers in Walworth County. Does anybody have any questions of me?
Good
Okay.
job, you did.
Oh, thank
And I don't see Katie James here. Do you have anything? for
Oh,
them?
I do, Mayor, I do. I have a report.
I know she sent it.
And it says, please read to council, and I will attempt to provide as much enthusiasm or, recreate the enthusiasm, but no. Katie just wanted me to say that, good evening, council. I spent last week at the Wisconsin Historical Society's annual Historic Preservation Conference in Appleton, networking on the city's behalf for our band shell restoration project and the Walworth County Historical Society. I attended several breakout sessions on historic preservation commissions and spoke personally with the state's historic preservation officer, Dinah Pecunis, about Elkhorn's projects in progress. Chief Eichmann and I were notified this month that unfortunately we did not receive the federal assistance for firefighter grant to supply new PPE to the firehouse staff. While frustrating, I've already attended the follow-up seminar and fully plan to apply again with revisions when it reopens again next month. Lastly, you have heard from Chad about the wonderful library renovation funding coming to Elkhorn. I'll be taking a more active role to assist the city with this massive renovation project over the next 2 years to ensure the grant's smooth implementation. This includes assisting Chad and the library advisory panel, city and state, whatever way I can to get the project completed before the October 2026 deadline. Thanks to Chad, Matt, Lindstrom, and treasurers Chris Sprigler for their expertise to make it happen. Thank you, Katie.
All right, thank you. Committee reports, financial and judicial.
Yes, we met on, we met on October 7th, 2024, where we approved the CIP and the general budget and passed it on to council for further review.
Okay, great, thank you, Gary. New business, we've got discussion and possible decision regarding proposed resolution 2431, a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of 2,085,000 general obligation promissory notes, Series 2024C. This is what Joe discussed.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness, sorry, Ken Minell,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody.
Yes.
Motion passes. We've got discussion and possible decision regarding proposed resolution 24-32, a resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of 1,515,000 waterworks and electric system revenue bonds, Series 2024D.
Make a motion to approve.
Got a motion, we got a second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please. I think the motion was.
It was kind of a mess.
I think it was a tie.
It was a tie.
Yeah.
Okay. Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Ken Minell,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness.
Yes.
We've got discussion and possible decision regarding proposed resolution 24-33, a resolution amending the 2024 general fund budget to authorize the purchase of equipment and complete additional maintenance projects in 2024.
Make a motion to approve.
A second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Ken Minell.
Yes.
Motion passes. We had discussion and possible decision regarding proposal to add voluntary vision coverage to the employee health benefit plan. Who's got this? You, Adam?
Yeah, just, as I mentioned in my memo, we can offer, we're getting ready to do open enrollment for our employee health plan, and we can include or offer vision coverage for our employees. If the city would not be contributing, it'd be strictly employee, funded. Employees can sign up if they want to. It'd just be deducted, the premiums would be deducted from payroll. So it's just whether or not the council is open to adding it. And we'll see how it goes, and if there's a lot of enthusiasm or people like it, then obviously we can bring it back in the future for, whether the city wants to, have some sort of employer contribution or support for it. But for the time being, it's just strictly voluntary. Because right now, any employees that want health insurance, or I should say want vision coverage, kind of have to go, outside the city through, actually the police association actually allows our city employees to participate with their vision coverage, but it's really kind of inconvenient to do that, and I don't know how much longer the police association is going to allow that to happen. So this is just an option, and it would be through vision. I should say it's through Delta Dental, who does our, not surprisingly, Delta does our dental coverage.
I think it's a good idea. I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Discussion regarding proposed 2025-2029 capital improvement plan.
Really, I guess the only thing I'd say from the F&J meeting was we made one or two small changes, one of which actually was reducing the annual maintenance for streets because of council, you just passing that resolution to allow an additional $15,000 worth of work this year. And then, so that was the major change from that. And then wanted to also mention that we took out the actual, as far as the fire station rehab had been going, we were using a budget number of like $12 million if the city had to build a new fire station, because that was if the city had to build a new fire station as opposed to being able to rehab. That number was purely, just for planning purposes to avoid artificially inflating the CIP and, you know, we didn't want to have a perception that the city was committed to, you know, building a new fire station. Again, that's not where we're at. We're strictly in doing the space needs analysis. So, in order to make the CIP consistent, as well as consistent with what our projections are for the impact on the debt limit for next year, we took out the $12 million. You know, obviously that's gonna be something that the council will have to discuss more once you get the results of the space needs analysis, but that's really the biggest change from the CIP from the F&J meeting.
Anyone have any questions? Is this just a discussion item?
It is. The plan is to come back, the public hearing on the budget and the CIP will be at the November 11th council meeting.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, I know the fire department would like to see the fire inspector position moved. I think 29 is when a vehicle would be purchased for an inspector. Currently, the mean experience age of our fire department is about 3 years, according to Trent. Right now, our firemen are doing our inspections. It would be a huge benefit if we could hire a full-time person, that someone like Trent's got picked out for it. It would help transfer the duties of our staff so they could get more training. Trent at his last position came up with a yearly training schedule to help sharpen our firemen's skills, and to be well-rounded. But the inspector is a key piece to this, and I'd like to see what we might be able to do about pushing that into this year, or 25, I guess.
I guess I'd just say that I know the fire chief has talked about wanting to, you know, in the future, you know, try to hire a full-time fire inspector. That's not something we included in the budget for next year. I know it was something we talked about aspirationally. I can't say that he requested it for next year, and honestly, I don't know whether we could have afforded it. Obviously, the fire department just hired a full-time assistant fire chief this past year, and so, you know, in terms of adding personnel, that's the reason why we haven't added that position for next year.
Well, isn't,
But if the council wants to, you know,
Well, I think the fire chief should come and speak to us if he wants it.
And he was at F&J as well.
Yeah.
So he didn't say nothing.
I mean, nothing set in stone until we sign off on the budget at, you know, sometime before Thanksgiving, so he can come forward, or, you know, whenever he wants, come to the next F&J meeting, or submit a memo, or whatever.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? We'll move on to the discussion regarding the proposed 2025 city budget.
I really just would say that, you know, as we talked about at the last F&J meeting, we had to cut approximately we had to cut approximately, you know, $120,000 from the budget in order to stay under the expenditure restraint limit. So that's part of what has been a challenge for us, obviously, in just the budget in general. I mean, we're using $100,000 in reserves for next year that we have from this year. So again, the budget, particularly the general fund, you know, does not have a lot of excess capacity. So and that's part of the reason why we asked the council to move forward the $76,000 in projects from next year to this year, because we don't have the funding to do it next year. And even if we had the funding, we can't because of the expenditure restraint. So that is the biggest changes, or I should say the biggest things to keep in mind. My memo does list just a breakdown of where the general fund is going in terms of expenses. So you could see that the police take up 35% of the budget, fire 22%, general government's 11%, public works and parks and forestry are 23%, and rec is 9%. And like I said earlier, the public hearing on the budget will be at the next council meeting. I did want to just mention that we did include the funding to at least continue to have the 4 flock cameras that the police department currently has. So we did tweak the budget to make that happen. And we shifted a few other things around, and as I listed in my memo, which I won't, regurgitate here, but, and then the only other change was increasing the COLA for non-bargaining employees from 2% to 2.75, and that was based upon looking at the numbers we had from around the state, which averaged the 2.75, and then looking at what the county's doing, Burlington, East Troy, Whitewater, and Lake Geneva. So if there's any questions about that. And lastly, we did include the mill rate for next year is projected to decrease by about 35 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. So it would go from, it's a little more than $7 right now, and be going down to $6.67. So.
Okay. Any questions for Adam on the budget? All right, we'll move on. Discussion and possible decision regarding request from the Lions Club to install signage in the city right-of-way. Everybody see the memo? You get that?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion?
Yeah, if we could just real briefly, I guess one of our questions is, if the council gets these kinds of requests in the future, how is the council going to decide who can, because effectively they want to be able to, their preference is to basically be attaching, from what I could tell, is attaching their city logo to city signs or placing them right next to city signs as you're entering into the city, so.
The welcoming signs?
Yes, yeah. So it's, at that point, I don't know if there's gonna be a process, if you get similar requests from similar organizations, how you're gonna handle that stuff, because we don't really have anything in place to sort of address these kinds of requests.
Sounds like a great opportunity to create something. Create another law.
And I did talk with, no,
Richard, three. To the left. There you go. Your other left. There you go.
Now it's on? All right, sweet.
It'll turn off on you while you talk, it does it to everybody. so.
Okay. I spoke via email, message with Adam about this request, and you do have to be careful what kind of precedent you set. There is a statute that allows you to grant encroachments into right-of-ways or privileges in rights-of-way, but it also requires whoever is asking for that privilege to indemnify the municipality. So it creates some protections, and you also can revoke the right as long as it's within your right-of-way. And I noticed this is on 11 and 67, so that might be state highway, so other rules would apply. But in any event, it is something that we do have a formative agreement. We've used it for signs, we've used it for parking, we've used it for driveways in unimproved right-of-ways, we've used it for flagpoles. So they're for patios or extensions of patios from private businesses, so gathering places. So it has been used, and we're starting to see it pop up more and more, particularly with outside spaces, because everybody wants to extend their businesses outside. So there is a form of agreement that we would recommend. We've kind of standardized that at our office, so that's good. So definitely it's something you need to think of. So if you are going to allow them, then I think it should be subject to the right-of-way, the privilege and right-of-way agreement.
Then I would amend my motion pending
Privilege and right-of-way agreement.
There you go, that.
Amend my second. Do I have to amend my second? Oh, there you go, amend.
All right, so we got a motion, a second. Any questions?
I just have a comment. Going forward, I'm in favor of anybody who wants to do something similar, having it come before the full council versus just fill out this form and we'll just attach it. So I want to see what the logo looks like, what's it going to say, what's, et cetera.
How big it is. Yeah.
What's that?
How big it is.
Right, how big it is, how tall it is, whatever. I just, this is I don't want it to just be a permitting thing like for licensing, here's your liquor license, go see Rebecca, right?
Yeah, it needs a review, you're right.
Okay.
Mayor, Chris would like to speak.
Yes, Chris.
Can I ask a question? Are these going to be erected to the city of the wooden signs that originally those were paid for by the chamber, and those are very specific wooden. I would want them to be cohesive to those signs. We also did a very good project where we did some plantings. I just worry that this is going to clutter them and not be cohesive. Because I guarantee you, if, just from what I know, if Rotary finds out Lions is putting a sign, Rotary is going to be asking you to put a sign up there too. How are they going to look in the cohesiveness of those signs? I know those were put in like 17 years ago and were not inexpensive 17 years ago. And they're wooden.
And again, that goes back to my point of I want to see the design and I want to see the proposal. Is it going to be attached in front of, next to, whatever? I want to know all that before we sign off on it.
I'm sorry, but $79, $80 for a sign that's gonna go in 4 locations, it's not gonna be cohesive, or, that's just my personal opinion. And I can see Adam from Chris, quiet.
No, I'm done with this. No.
I just have reservations. I'm just asking, we've spent a lot of money and we want to improve how we look coming into Elkhorn. And nothing against Lions, I appreciate them wanting to promote themselves, but we maybe need to create a different way of doing that. You go into other municipalities where there's a sign with all the civic groups that exist in the municipalities. Maybe that's something we need to work with, and I would be happy to work with all the civic groups and say, do we want to make something that's cohesive to work with what we have? Just a thought. I sometimes overspeak.
Does this need a little more thought?
Yes. Yeah. So can I rescind my motion?
Can somebody make a motion to table, because that would take precedence?
I'll make a motion to
maybe
table.
a date certain, a month from now. Postpone, or
Table and postpone is the same thing, so.
Yeah, to a date certain.
Yeah.
So postpone is probably more accurate.
My motion will be amended to table this matter until the first council meeting in December. During the meantime, I'll ask staff to send out a letter to the 4 or 5 civic groups that we have, Lions Club, Rotary, Kiwanis, Optimus, whatever else we have, explaining this is something that may be on the books. What are your thoughts? Do you want to be part of this? Do you want to, say thanks, no thanks? And then we'll regroup. How's that?
Did someone second that motion?
I think Kurt did.
Kurt did,
Yeah.
okay.
And I'll
Great.
amend
We've got a motion and a second to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Just for clarification, I had asked them for clarification and they didn't really provide it, so that's why unfortunately I don't have a lot of great information for you.
Okay. We've got discussion and possible decision regarding execution of change order number 2 for the 2024 East Centralia Street Reconstruction Project in the amount of $6,000.
I think our budget's in bad shape now, man.
That was a bad change order.
Woo! I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody.
Yes.
Ken Minell,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Peter Harvey.
Yes.
Motion passes. We had discussion and possible decision regarding payment application number 5 from Wilcomb Excavating and Grading for the 2024 East Centralia Street Reconstruction Project in the amount of $590,180.77.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Ken Minell,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Scott McClory.
Yes.
We got discussion and possible decision regarding use of Elkhorn Area School District's electronic signs for city announcements. This, Kurt, you want to take this, or?
Yeah,
you wanna-
I spoke with John Aslan over at the school district, because the school's got 7 of these electronic signs. And having, things like, well, more like, seasonal announcements. It's your week for leaves. Make sure you've got them a foot away from the curb. Winter parking, whatever it is. They're offering us the space. Because, half the population walks by these signs twice a day. And it would be, no matter what the sign is, they're willing to to work with us to help, get any messages we need out. I mean, especially, things like, you need a drain clean, call Matt. Things like that. So John was excited about doing it. I brought it to Adam, and that's how we were on the, agenda. But so, again, we're talking about 7 different locations in the city that we could expand our messages to throughout the year.
Do we need like an agreement with the school system?
They didn't really seem to indicate that. Just for clarification too, whether or not this requires a formal vote or not is more so just a discussion. As Alderman Hartnett said, he contacted me about it. I contacted John. John just said, yes, the school's open to doing that for any significant city events. So it was more so just for discussion purpose, as well as if there's anything in particular we've talked about, obviously street closures, potentially, leaf collection, election, a few things that come to mind. But if there's anything in particular from a communication perspective that you consider to be a significant city event that you want publicized, I guess either tell me now or tell me in the future as those things, come to mind, so.
Who would coordinate with the school system on getting those messages up in a timely manner?
Yeah, I think it's great for,
Is that our
I think that's a new city clerk or deputy city clerk would be a great.
That's why I copied it, copied the message.
So we'll have to figure that out.
Okay.
I think, obviously you have to be judicious, you can't give them 20 messages because they've got school stuff that's rolling all the time too. But I mean, for like leaf collection starts and ends or whatever, winter storm warning, every car has to be off the street by 12 o'clock today. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's 7 more places that we can get our message across, and God bless former police officer John Angelone, who's now the facilities director for the city, who's willing to do that for us.
Well, and John said to me that we could count on him delivering.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, between our our social media, this is just another extension.
Exactly.
So.
I think, if I may speak on it, I just would say that, with us doing it in-house, currently if it's, a roadway closure, a lot of times we'll use Facebook, and get it out through the city's website as well. Not everybody sees the website, but I think a lot of people do, you see it on Facebook, and not everybody has Facebook, so it's great to have another.
But for someone who's literally driving into the city that day, who doesn't know that there's a winter storm advisory that you can't park on the street because they don't live here,
Right.
They see that sign coming into the city.
The issue is.
We have that issue so much all the time.
The issue is that those things change so frequently, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the concern, is that we can do it in-house here, but trying to, and I'm not saying that the school would be harder to work with, it'd be just as easy, but it's something that we can manage right here, so we can do it instantaneously, to where it might be a little bit difficult for things that move so much like that, But for, like even roadway closures, sometimes we anticipate maybe a week, but it may end up only taking 3 days, hopefully. Maybe it'll take 10.
Right.
But those things, we can manage those on the fly here. So some of it, I think we would just have to kind of, I'd say, pick and choose what we think might be, a good opportunity to put out there.
And you're gonna have to stay on top of it. You can't have the thing up that says come to Oktoberfest next week. Well, Oktoberfest already happened. We've all seen that. We've all seen that in different communities where it says trivia night at the library. October 6th. Well, it's October 12th. Why is that sign still up? Wherever, if he went,
What's right?
Yeah. So
What I found out about the signs is you can program these up to 200 days in advance. So you'd be able to put an ending date.
Do we have to physically have someone with the password to manipulate the keys, or we don't know?
No.
No.
I got John to open up the door.
Yeah.
When I talked to John, the plan would be we would contact John and he
Okay.
request that he
As
put it
long
on
as he doesn't
there,
mind
so.
taking on that work, and like I said, as long as we don't abuse it.
Well, my idea was more for, seasonal stuff,
Yeah.
Cause like, keep your leaves a foot away from the curb. Why? Cause Matt doesn't wanna clean your drain next week. Cause that's where all the leaves are gonna end up, you know what I mean? And like I said, half the population in the city walks by there twice a day. So, just to make it a little easier, guys, that's all.
All right. We've got a closed session, so pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for a governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. It's a discussion regarding settlement offer and release for damage to city handrail arising from the accident that occurred on or about July 2024 at or near 625 North Wisconsin Street. Can I get a motion to go to closed session?
I'll make the motion to go into closed session.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Ken Minell,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness.
Yes.
Back in open session here. And
I'll make a motion to accept the offer from the settlement, or from the insurance company, reference the incident near Sparinos.
I'll second.
got a motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Roll call, please.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody,
Yes.
Peter Harvey,
Yes.
Kurt Harkness,
Yes.
Ken Minell.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Whatever. Let's go.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.